Kenya, East Africa, 1992. A 40-mile electric fence with 5,000 volts of power pulsing through the wires. In the vehicle is wildlife artist Wolfgang Weber, a man concerned about wildlife and its future. What can be so valuable it has to be guarded like the gold at Fort Knox? In fact, what Wolfgang has come to see is far more valuable than gold. He has come to this protected enclosure inside the reserve to draw a rhino which has had its horns sawn off before being released into the wild again in the hope that this will save its life. All this, the wires, the arms, the guards, are necessary to protect a few white and black rhinos from the poachers' guns in East Africa so that they can breed. Wolfgang's love of wildlife and his deep concern for its future is expressed in his art.
I have traveled for many years painting and sketching wildlife. But now there are places I visit and I wonder when I come back next time how much wildlife will be left or how many places of natural beauty have been destroyed. My paintings of animals living wild are my own plea for their survival. To capture creatures which may not be with us forever and put down on paper how perhaps the last of the rhinos really looked in the wild, I paint because of my concern for the fragile and beautiful things which may soon disappear.
Ngari Sugoi Sanctuary exists because of one extraordinary woman. Anna Mertz gave up a comfortable retirement and instead raised the money to erect the electric fence needed to enclose the reserve and pay for all the running expenses. She could not have done this without the Craig family. They allowed her to use the land, which is part of their vast Lever Downs ranch. When a black rhino mother abandoned her baby, Anna raised the calf herself. She called it Samir. Now full grown, she still has an affectionate bond with her foster mother. Despite the fence and guards, every day Anna and her tracker monitor as many of the wild rhinos as possible. This rhino bull, named Makora, is the sole survivor of a massacre in Meru National Park, where all the other white rhinos and some of the rangers were killed by poachers. Here, at last, he has found a refuge. Throughout Africa, with the exception of a few countries in the south, rhinos have become so rare that Wolfgang can only be sure of seeing them in a reserve like this. It can be exciting and dangerous to follow a wild black rhino on foot. Rhinos are short-sighted and depend on their acute sense of smell to detect danger at a distance, so they check the wind direction by watching it blow the dust.
When I see animals in the wild and I want to draw them, I choose one and suddenly there is a certain relationship between us when I try to catch the spirit of the animal in my sketchbook.
He painted the musk ox for his book after a visit to the Dovrefjell National Park in Norway, where decades ago, musk oxen were reintroduced. This spring of mountain water looks like a pure life-giving source as it rushes crystal clear through Wolfgang's fingers. Nothing on earth can live without it. When you're really thirsty, nothing tastes quite as good. But even here, the water is threatened by far-off industrial pollution. Wolfgang has a surprise as he reaches the top of a high ridge. There, in front of him, is a group of wild reindeer.
When I see these animals, it reminds me of a herd of reindeer which had to be killed in Lapland only a few hundred miles north of here, after the nuclear disaster at Chernobyl.
The tiny alpine flowers celebrate the onset of summer with a profusion of colour. Musk oxen spend the warmer months feeding near streams, eating grasses, willows and flowers. They have thick double-layered coats to protect them during the cold winter, and in spring, the soft woolly underhair falls out, giving them a dishevelled appearance. The bull, brushing and marking bushes, is defining his territory, perhaps as a warning to Wolfgang. A fieldfare is anxious for the safety of her chick. It instinctively stays completely still, until the musk ox is so close it risks being trampled underfoot. The long hours of daylight at this northern latitude give Wolfgang plenty of time to fill his sketchbook with notes and drawings back at camp. The cows give birth to a single calf after a pregnancy of about 8 months. The baby can keep up with its mother within a few hours of its birth. Its mother's horn is a convenient scratching post, but against an adversary, it's a deadly weapon. Most of the great rivers flow towards the ocean. On their way, they are diverted, polluted, and carelessly used as if water was limitless. From the icy streams in the mountains of Norway to the steaming equatorial rainforests, the problems are the same. Spectacular Iguazu, the world's widest waterfall on the border of Argentina and Brazil. The Guarani Indians named the falls Iguazu, or Great Water. They called this area the place where clouds are born. The delightful Toco toucan is symbolic of South American bird life. National parks on both sides of the falls protect 925 square miles of subtropical rainforest, one of the world's richest ecosystems. Plunging 250 feet into the chasm below, the Iguazu River joins the Parana River and sweeps on to the sea. From the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean and the clear blue waters of Hawaii, where Wolfgang has come in search of whales.
First you drop into the water and you feel you are going down and you have this enormous blue space around you, which is fantastic. And you hear the voices of the whales and you feel it with your whole body. When it's filled with humpback songs and it's like a fairy tale and much more exciting than I ever expected. I think it's better to dive free when I want to see the whales underwater because I don't disturb them with the noise of the aquaballon or with bubbles, and there's a much better chance to come close to them.
Humpbacks communicate by producing songs of extraordinary tonal range, from the highest to the lowest frequencies audible to man. Each year, the songs change. Sound travels 4 times faster in water than in air, which means some of their calls could travel in a quiet ocean for thousands of miles. But the sound pollution of commercial shipping has dramatically reduced their range. The whales allow him to approach, for with a few deft strokes they could leave him hundreds of yards behind.
I know it's only a few moments sometimes I see a humpback whale underwater. And these are precious moments and I want to hold it and to keep it in my mind, and therefore I don't miss a single second.
Sometimes a fin breaks the surface, but the waves erase their tracks. The short-fin pilot whales are beautifully streamlined to glide easily through the water. We can only watch the creatures of the sea, fascinated by their mastery of the element, in which man is an alien body. Pilot whales are toothed whales, and sometimes swim in groups of up to several hundred. Males can reach 20 feet in length and weigh 2.5 tons. They were frequently killed for target practice by the old whaling crews, out searching for the big whales. They have been recorded diving to a depth of 2,000 feet. And Russian and US navies trained them to recover torpedoes lost in deep water. "60 feet down, Wolfgang swims close to the whales. Soon he has to return to the surface for air. The pilot whales swim on with slow, sinuous movements. A female joins the male, and together they perform a courting display as graceful as any ballet. Humpbacks spend the winter months from November to April in these calm, warm, protected waters, where they're believed to give birth and mate. The calf swims just above and to the side of its mother, in constant visual contact. She produces between 100 and 130 gallons of milk each day to feed her baby. When newborn, it weighs about 2 tons and grows around a foot a month on her very rich milk. In summer, they return to the food-rich waters of southeast Alaska. After a brief respite, several whaling nations want to start killing whales again. Their protection has been short-lived. Sadly, both the largest creatures in the ocean and the largest creatures on land are amongst those most persecuted by man. Kilimanjaro and elephants epitomize Africa. For years, elephants were slaughtered in their thousands, plagued by a serious poaching problem in many African countries. Fortunately, this relentless slaughter has almost been stopped. Buying ivory has become socially unacceptable in many countries. Wolfgang lived in Kenya in the 1960s. He was attracted to this vast continent by its rich diversity, spectacular plains, and game to be counted in its thousands. Although these wilderness areas have dwindled due to ever-increasing population pressures, there are still many places which breathe the old magic, which is Africa. Wolfgang has a deep affection for Africa. He lived in East Africa for 5 years, and it had a major influence upon his work.
It is a place I love and I'm drawn back to again and again. This continent has many sad stories in conservation terms, but there are successes as well.
Tsavo East National Park in Kenya is one. Since the severe drought in the 70s, when almost 20% of the elephants died, its vegetation has recovered, and poaching has almost stopped due to the world ban on ivory trading. Now there are enough survivors to make Tsavo one of the best elephant sanctuaries in Africa. This little elephant is only a few weeks old. Stretching his trunk to reach the water, which is what all the others do, ends in disaster. The cow calls to him. She knows that he needs help to get out. She touches him with her trunk to reassure him. The second baby probably belongs to another female in the group, as twins are very rare.
The most wonderful thing is to be close to an animal. You can watch them and you can draw them and they don't notice you and they disappear at the end and nobody was disturbed. That's the most satisfying way of watching animals.
This youngster enjoys playing the bully, especially as his mother is close by to protect him. Bulls play fight all their lives. These young elephants are testing their strength to establish their rank in the hierarchy. Elephants from different family groups touch and smell each other when they meet, sometimes entwining their trunks in greeting. A politician recently said that elephants are a thing of the past. They are not necessary and have no place in modern times. He did not realize that elephants have a vital role to play in African ecology. By wallowing in the mud, a herd will carry away hundreds of kilos of earth on their huge bodies, which prevents the water holes from filling up with soil and keeps them open for other animals to drink. This is just one example of the many important functions they perform. The waterhole is an important meeting place for elephants, where family groups interact. The herd leaves, but someone has been left behind.
Always, it's very important to check the wind direction again and again. The wind can turn, and if it turns, they will discover you immediately, and they will be very excited about it. that's for sure.
The matriarch's sensitive trunk soon locates the threat, and the herd demonstrates. A young cow is still uneasy. Again, the herd displays in unison. They remain wary, but slowly start to feed. From the largest of all land animals to one of the most elegant felines of the African plains. The cheetah is the fastest animal on 4 legs. It poses no threat to the buffalo chewing the cud, while oxpeckers clean its skin of biting insects, including ticks. Ostriches, with their sharp vision, are excellent lookouts for danger. The cheetahs are looking for prey. But all the animals around here are too big for these beautiful predators. They can reach 70 miles an hour over a short distance, a burst of speed few animals can escape. In common with many other creatures, the cheetah's numbers are dwindling because of human pressures. Their prey species are disappearing, and the grasslands on which they live have been broken up for farms and ranches. Parks like Tsavo are essential for their survival. Even though the cheetah is no match for the buffalo, they withdraw and leave the cats to hunt. The graceful gerenooks look rather like a stretched version of the impala. They feed on bushes which other animals are unable to reach. They fit in between the giraffes, which feed on top of the trees, and the lesser antelopes, which feed on the ground and small bushes. Each creature fills a niche not taken up by another. The first dark clouds appear on the horizon, and the sound of thunder heralds the arrival of the great rains. For all creatures and the scorched earth, a revival is about to begin. A 1,000 miles west of Tsavo, high in the Virunga Mountains of Rwanda, the rains are also about to break. Of all the threatened species Wolfgang has travelled so extensively to observe and paint, there is one that stands apart from all the others in his affections: the mountain gorilla. In 2 isolated pockets of forest, totaling 285 square miles, there are perhaps 650 mountain gorillas left. Climbing with scientist Martha Robbins and the Rwandan tracker through dense undergrowth, high on the slopes of the volcanoes, trampling giant nettles and thistles underfoot, slipping and sliding through mud, and shivering from the chill mist and rain, Wolfgang peers into the shadows, searching for those elusive black shapes. And when he finds them, their eyes meet his, and one of man's closest relatives watches him silently. When the rain starts, gorillas sometimes squat under the nearest large tree to avoid the cold shower. With all the shelter occupied, Wolfgang has no option but to sit out in the rain. The 400-pound silverback observes him. Beats Me is a 26-year-old silverback male. He was formerly the group leader. As the shower ends, one of the juveniles is curious about the stranger in their midst. Titus, the dominant silverback, although only 18 years old, is now undisputed leader of the group. He gives the signal to move on in their search for food. A benevolent dictator, he decides where they go, how far they travel, and where they sleep at night. Due to the work of Dian Fossey and other scientists over the past 25 years, some groups have learned to tolerate the approach of man. Many of the gorilla families are left completely alone and not visited by humans. Some groups, like this one, are studied by scientists. And a few groups are visited by small, supervised tourist parties. Scientists working with the great apes have learned that they are gentle and caring creatures. Supported by the Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund and other foundations, they continue to study the gorillas in close cooperation with the Rwandan parks authorities. Gorillas have a surprisingly delicate touch when feeding on thistles. Another of their favorite foods is succulent stems of wild celery. They obtain water from the moisture on the plants. Their soft brown eyes communicate some of their thoughts, silently reflecting their curiosity.
To draw gorillas is quite different from drawing most of other animals, because it's like human portrait. You know this gorilla and you want to paint his individual impression of his face.
Even though tourists are restricted to seeing just a few groups in Volcano National Park, revenue from visiting the gorillas is Rwanda's third largest foreign exchange earner, and the gorillas are therefore one of their most valuable assets. Two great primates, one silver-haired, the other silver-backed, sit at peace with each other in the forest. In 1969, before the advent of guerrilla tourism, 40% of the park was destroyed by a European community-sponsored scheme to grow pyrethrum, a natural insecticide. By the time the forest had been cut down and the factory built, a synthetic substitute was available, and the project collapsed. Now the gorillas have even less space in which to live. Wolfgang tries to get out of their way as they come up the slope. He moves slowly and deliberately to avoid alarming them. Gorillas use a kind of language to communicate with each other, with over 20 different sounds. The Belch Vocalization is one of the most commonly used, an expression of well-being. In dense vegetation, it keeps group members in touch with each other. The silverback pauses to scrutinize Wolfgang's shoes as he passes. They stop to rest and digest up to 60 pounds of vegetation, which they need every day to sustain their imposing bodies. Like human children, young gorillas never sit still. They frolic, clown, and perform endless gymnastics, examining everything within their reach. After a rest period, Titus decides it's time to move on again. Wolfgang avoids making prolonged eye contact, as staring is often interpreted as aggressive behavior. Titus pauses in the clearing, giving Wolfgang an ideal opportunity to sketch him. Perhaps as a display of strength, the great ape breaks off a branch. Gorillas resolve most disagreements through intimidation rather than attack, often beating their chest to signal or release tension. All gorillas do this, even tiny ones. The strutting walk is a show of strength.
I admire their strength and dignity. The Great Silverback's tranquil face is fascinating. It can explode into fury at a moment's notice if he feels threatened or if the safety of his family is challenged.
Studies have revealed that gorillas show a range of behavior, including curiosity, boredom, pleasure, excitement, fear, and affection, just like humans. Whenever the adults rest during the day, most of the youngsters remain active. Titus has been trying to mate with a female for several days, and he watches her intently. They move off into the bushes together, arm in arm. As the leader, Titus mates with all the adult females in the group. Maturing females usually transfer voluntarily to other groups, especially if the silverback they are leaving is their father. And males leave after reaching maturity to prevent conflict, because the silverback will not allow them to mate with the females in his group. Young male gorillas like to imitate the large silverback's strutting walk. Rwanda is concerned about the future of these gorillas. The government has set up anti-poaching patrols, guides, guards, and an education program to explain the importance of the park and the gorillas to the children. However, more than half the people who live near the park have never seen a gorilla.
That's an amazing thing to watch these huge, strong apes playing with their little children. And their little children, they don't have any fear. And they are so patient. And the little ones, they are coming again and again. It's really fantastic to watch them.
This play fighting is an important lesson for their future. But in the end, even Titus gets fed up with them. It is not only population pressure, but a rebel war that threatens their existence. The great silverback Mrithri, star of the film Gorillas in the Mist, was killed by soldiers as they stumbled upon the resting gorillas at night. All the great ape did was to alert his family. He gave a barking alarm call, and the terrified soldiers shot him at close quarters. Developing countries like Rwanda, Uganda and Zaire, which share the mountain gorilla habitat, have limited resources to protect the gorillas. Other countries have to help them to ensure that one of man's closest and rarest relatives still has a future. Half a mile from here is the park boundary and cultivated farmland with around 780 people per square mile. By the year 2000, Rwanda, the most densely populated country in Africa, will have almost doubled its population to 10 million. As they head along the path, they hear the firing of machine guns and the explosion of mortar bombs, the noise of human conflict. These sounds, however distant, are a stark reminder how closely their future and the future of all wildlife lies in the hands of man. Fortunately, the rebel war appears to be coming to an end, and tourists are again visiting the gorillas. But this tiny patch of forest is their only refuge. His imagination fired by his poignant experience with Titus and his family of gorillas, Wolfgang adds a new dimension to his art and creates his first sculpture. Like Wolfgang, some of us can create a likeness of a creature, a shape, an interpretation. But one thing we cannot do, if we allow a creature to become extinct, is to recreate that magic spark of life.